All right, welcome everyone to our class on CMA Essentials. This is part of our Journey to Icon series. I'm Deb Ronayne, and my guest here with me today is Christopher Staub, one of our great agents. Chris, how long have you been a licensed realtor?
Hi, Deb. Good morning. I've been a licensed realtor since 2019.
Great. And how many CMAs do you think you've done?
Just thinking off the top of my head, I've probably done about 10 or 11 CMAs.
Good. Okay. Have you found some challenges with those CMAs?
Yes, absolutely. I have.
Okay. All right. Well, this is clearly one of the most important things we do as realtors, because as we all know, if we want to be trusted professionals, we must understand the market and we have to know what we're talking about when we speak to our clients. So what is a CMA? The CMA, comparative market analysis, is an estimate of the home's value used to help sellers set listing prices and to help buyers make competitive offers. This is not an appraisal. It's very different from a certified appraisal. The analysis considers the location, age, size, style, and condition and other factors for the subject property comparables. This report is equally critical for buyers and sellers. We're going to use recently sold homes from the same subdivision as the subject property. Ideally sold in the last 6 months, but most of the time right now we're going back 12. What doesn't influence fair market value? And I think we all hear this all the time. What they paid, what they need, and what they want have nothing to do with fair market value. So we have to really know what we're talking about and present it in a way that our sellers understand so they can list at an appropriate price. So you want to prepare for your listing appointment. I usually call this a pre-listing appointment, actually. You want to ask your seller on the phone, excuse me, how many bedrooms and baths does the home have? What is the square footage to their knowledge? What kind of updates have they done? And those are really improvements. What's the age of the important systems of the home? So that's going to be the roof, the mechanicals, things like that. And we have to understand improvements versus maintenance, okay? If they've just put in a new furnace and central air unit, or they put on a roof after it was 30 years old and kind of dead to life, those aren't improvements, that's maintenance. That's considered keeping proper maintenance and systems going, okay? That doesn't add to the value like a brand new kitchen with granite and a backsplash and new cabinets and new bathrooms. Those are improvements. So very important they understand. Any buyer out there expects to buy a home in good or very good or excellent condition. So you got to get into your research once you talk to your client. You're going to really utilize your MLS to look for comparables. And you want to get your arms around everything you can possibly do with this search. So you're going to go into tax records and you're going to verify the square footage. A lot of times there are discrepancies. Discrepancies here can happen because, people at the county are data entry people, and sometimes errors are made. But when you list that property, you're going to have to indicate where you obtain that square footage. So it might be from public records, which is the tax record. It could be from a certified appraisal, or it could be from blueprints. What you don't want to do is say the number was obtained from the seller. If there's no hard certified proof or evidence, don't go with that square footage, because you could be proven wrong down the road and that could be a problem. Make sure you understand the legal description of the home, understand the school district. Some communities have two, and often one of those is the shining star and the other one may not be so desirable. Know if there's a homeowners association. And if you happen to be working on a condo, this is a very good time to find out, excuse me, if FHA financing is available. And you can go right to HUD.gov and check approved condominium associations for that community and find out if it's approved or not. Sorry. I want to mention that the recession really cleaned out a lot of condo associations with the FHA financing, because many of them just decided to forego all the cost, expense, and red tape to have them approved. And then also, if you are listing a condo, your listing appointment is a really good time to tell the seller that you are going to need, at the time that listing is signed, a copy of the master deed, the bylaws, and financials. If you're listing a home in a subdivision, you want the bylaws. Very, very important. And also, if it's a newer home or if there is a discrepancy, do check the blueprints and just see what that seller has available. So is any of this different than what you might have done in the past, Chris?
Yes, it is a little different, especially with the tax records and the school districts. When I first started doing CMAs, I didn't know that about looking up the tax records to verify the information from the owner. So I think that's an excellent tool that you can use, as well as the school districts being extremely important in people's home searches.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, the property values can really fluctuate. School districts really drive property values. We know we have some declining communities where the schools have just fallen flat, and that has totally sucked the life out of property values. And then we have the other districts where the schools are very strong and people wait in line to get into that community, or it takes every nickel they have to do it. So school districts are so very important. So we're going to run the basics to start our searches. Okay, so we're going to take that legal description and we're going to start with the style of the home. Very, very important. Do not crisscross these, and do not ever compare a ranch to a split level home. When I speak of a ranch, I think that's universal. That's a one level home. When I speak of a Cape Cod, this is a very regional term. I mean, this varies from even where we are on the west side of Detroit to some other realtors on the east side of Detroit. They call these maybe split levels more often. They don't really use the term Cape Cod. When I say Cape Cod, that's a home with a first floor master and 2 or 3 other bedrooms upstairs. It's not a home where somebody's turned a library or a den into a small bedroom on the main floor, and then it has 3 or 4 bedrooms upstairs. That's not a Cape Cod. We want a master suite on the same main level. Then you have a colonial. We know that's a 2-story home with all of the bedrooms up. And then we have a variety of split level homes. That's going to be a bi-level, a tri-level, a quad level, and a raised ranch. And you got to be very careful with those raised ranches. Oftentimes realtors list a raised ranch as a ranch, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You aren't going to want to put an older, more mature couple into a split ranch or a raised ranch rather, because they're going to be schlepping in the lower level of the house in their garage and having to carry groceries up to the main level of the house. So sometimes you really need to go through photos and do more research to understand, are you dealing with a raised ranch, or is it a true ranch? So price-wise, the ranch is the most expensive home to build. Why? Because it has the biggest foundation. Next in line is the Cape Cod. That's the second most costly home to build because the foundation is bigger to hold that main floor master suite. Now you get into the colonial, which is much less expensive than the first two because it's a smaller foundation and it goes straight up. And the very least expensive to build are the bi-level, tri-level, and quad level homes, because you're kind of stacking layers on a smaller foundation. So there's your differences. Also, when you're running the basics, basement is important, whether it has one or not, and garage. And as always, keep with the proper school district. You may have to further your research if you're getting maybe too many listings, or you really have to redefine, and you might have to go plus or minus to the year built. Often when I do this, it just depends on what's coming up in a search. I might have to go plus or minus 10 years to the subject property's build date to really define the appropriate comps. And I might have to go plus or minus 500 square feet to really further define the comparables to get closest to the subject property. Sometimes we have trouble finding comps, and in that case, we might have to run a radius area to the subject property to find comps. Chris and I were working on one of these yesterday. We had a neighborhood with every type of home possible and every size of home possible, and built from the 1940s to the early 2000s. So new construction may also require additional research. Sometimes those haven't been put on the multi-list, so you might have to do a little bit more legwork. When you come up with your CMA report, ideally you want to have 2 or 3 active listings. It's good to have 1 to 2 pending listings, and really a minimum of 3 or more sold listings on there. Obviously 5 or more would be best. You're going to be looking for the average price per square foot, the average days on market, and the sale price percentage to the original list price. You'll find that a lot of areas have a very unique personality and how they sell. I can think of Northville Hills here in our area, for instance. Every single year, that number's 94%. So that tells me people are listing too high and they're ending up selling for 94% of what they're asking. And then also, once again, you want the most similar homes to the one that you're comping. So let's run a CMA. I have to pop out of here for a moment, and we will go pick up our MLS. And there we go. Chris, can you see this listing on Oakley?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so let's say you showed this property yesterday and your clients want to make an offer. Let's just take a quick look. It's a bad front elevation photo, a little crooked. I'm very picky about photos. All of our listings get professional photos, and they deserve professional photos. So we have neutral colors, smaller kitchen, obviously it's a small home, nice granite, white cabinets, that's great, stainless appliances, tasteful decor. We have, looks like some hardwood floors. I like this age home with the cove ceilings, very nice. Yeah, it looks like they have the hand scraped flooring in there, so they've made some improvements, updated bath. Another type of, it's probably a vinyl plank flooring. And the bedrooms. Basement, this is a ranch home. So they have drywall, a ceiling. It looks very nicely done. I'll tell you right now, that is not code. That venting on the dryer, that should be rigid, not flexible. That's a fire hazard. Can't help being picky. Okay, so those are our photos. So we have this nice ranch home. It's been on the market for a week. That's a little bit unusual right now. We have a 2.5 car garage, a little over 1,200 square feet, 202 per square foot. They're asking basically 245. So let's jump in and see what we get on some comps. So I think a lot of MLS systems across the country are quite similar. If not, you're going to have to kind of learn how to maneuver and work through the one that you have. So we're going to do a residential search, a quick format. And Chris, if I start bouncing around too quickly, just mention that and I'll slow down.
Okay, no worries. I'm keeping up.
So we want to check coming soon. A year ago, we weren't even thinking about coming soon, but now we want to click anything that's coming soon, active, pending, and sold. We're just going to start with some basics here. I want transactions that have sold. I don't want to see anything that was leased. We're going to pick residential, not condominiums. We're going to pick our area, which happens to be Livonia, Michigan. That's a little MLS code there. And we're going to pick, I'm going to go right to the legal description because I just want to get a real quick oversight into this neighborhood. So this is just kind of a wide net at this point. The sub is Algonquin Park. Now, for those of you with my same MLS, which is Real Comp, I have a lot of fields down here that, you know, I have put in here. You can customize this to make it your own. You can add and remove whatever you want. This legal description, it's at the top. I use it all the time. The asterisks are wildcards, okay? Because again, you might get into some odd situations where somebody did an input wrong. It might be very sensitive with the search criteria. So those little wildcards are very helpful. So I have not clicked what kind of home it is. I haven't clicked anything about a basement or garage. I'm just looking at the neighborhood. So let's see what we have. Click results. And we have the one active that we're pretending we showed. And then we have various solds. And I can see where this is listed. I can see some much lower sales and one higher sale. So I'm going to click all, select all, and I have to click print to get to the format of the report that I personally rely on this each and every day. It's called a CMA one line. I like portrait, you might like landscape, and then I'm going to say print to PDF. Here we go. You can customize these with your information at the top. Here's our active. There's nothing coming soon and there's nothing pending right now. So I can see that they're asking $202 a foot. And then I can see these all vary a little bit, okay? We're dealing with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. Now I noticed one of those bathrooms was in the basement. This is a small house, it's okay. Down here though, we have a 4-bedroom home. And then we have some with 1.5 baths. Here's the cumulative days on the market. And overall in the subdivision, look at that. They're selling at 99% of their original list price with an average days on the market at 14. Looks like a pretty hot area, right? I think everything is right now. So that's just good information for me. I'll probably print this and kind of refer back to it. And now we want to go back though and refine this a little bit. Okay, I have this stuff messing with me here at the top. There we go. So I'm going to go back
I have a quick question for you real quick. Do you
Yes.
always use the subdivision code in the legal description, or is there any time that you would not use that?
No, the only time I wouldn't is if there isn't one. If it's like, oh gosh, some big, huge 10-acre parcel of land that's not in a subdivision, you're going to have to go with the radius search. And I can show you, let me go back to criteria. If we had to do that, you can do a map search. It defaults to a 1/4 mile. And what you would do is type your subject property address in here and search it that way. But when you're dealing with suburban area with all these subdivisions, anytime there's a legal description or subdivision name, that is what I'm running. Okay. So now I want to get a little closer to the home that we showed. I'm going to say it does have a basement and it does have a garage. And here's where it's really important. It was 1 story and it's a ranch. Now we look at our results. That really dropped. We're down to 4. And look what happened here. We lost our subject property as an active. And I can tell you why. Because the listing agent on our subject property didn't put an architectural style in the listing. He left it blank, but he did put an architectural level of 1 story. So because of that one missing bit of information, we lost the subject. So now we have to go back. And I'm going to have to take ranch out We're just going to have to rely on the 1 story. So I've removed ranch. Now we have our 5 matches back. We'll click results. And there we go. So nothing coming soon, nothing pending. And I know that's going to be because things sell very quickly. And we have the 4 sold. So let's look at this report. Again, if you're in my MLS and you don't see this CMA 1 line, it says faintly to click here for more reports, and you can get them all. The ones you use most often are going to be the ones that show up. So here we go back to our CMA 1 line. And here's what you're going to be talking to your seller about, all right? And or your buyer, if you're making an offer on this home. So the subject property has been on the market 7 days, 1 week. And we know what they're asking, the 202 per square foot. We know the square footage we're dealing with. These lot sizes are all about the same. Really, that's not much of a variance. We did pick up 1.5 baths here. You know what? Let's go back and change that. Let's just make sure that we're really dealing with apples to apples. Go back to criteria. We're going to say 2 full baths. That way we're not picking up that one with the 1.5 baths. Okay, back again, click them all. For me, it's print, CMA 1 line, and print to PDF. These are easily printed, saved, and everything else. So now we're dealing with apples to apples. They all have a garage, they have a basement. Now I could have gone further and I could have added finished basement, but that's something I'm going to go through here at the end, and I'm going to click through these 3 properties. I'll look at the photos. I'm going to see what the basement is looking like. Is it finished or not? I didn't want to get this dropped down to anything really below 3 comps at this point, although I may have to. So we are looking at comparable homes that have sold in an average of 4 days, right? That's telling me right now, this home on Oakley is overpriced. It's been on the market 7 days compared to the average of 4. They're all about the same square footage, lot sizes, year built, all very, very similar. Looking at list price to sold price, this one sold for $1 more. This one did not get what they were asking. And this one got more than they were asking. So the average overall, these homes are selling for 99% of what the seller's asking. That's great. And that also means too that people were listing reasonably. You don't want to list too high. But the thing I'm going to point out, if this was my my buyer looking at this, now it wouldn't be my seller because I would have done these comps already, and it'd be a little bit embarrassing that they're kind of listed at 13% over average. If I take their 202 divided by the average of the 178.50 a foot down here, which is just an average. We know our subject property has a finished basement, right? And it's very nicely done. But is it nicely done to the point of being at 202 over the highest price sale of 185? That's going to be the hard questions we have to answer. So I just think because it hasn't sold or gone under contract yet, the buying market is having a little pushback on this one. So we also have a 2.5 car garage on this where the others are 2. You know, that's a nice bonus. I don't think I'd put a lot of weight or value on that little bit of extra space. So let's go back and see what this Laurie Street home, the highest price property in here. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so it is an updated kitchen. It's Formica, not granite. It's not a huge deal. There's no backsplash. Some dated things in here, dated fixtures. Updated bath somewhat, although people aren't crazy about pedestal sinks these days. Got some hardwood flooring, probably original to that house. Got some horrible paint, glossy primary colors, and a bit of a finished basement. So yeah, I think our property is much nicer than this. Okay. but is it that much better? And so that's going to be $17 a square foot. That's what you have to work out with your client. Now, if there were two offers in on this property and your buyer desperately wants it, you're going to have to go for it. And you're in this market, you're going to have to guarantee the appraisal to a certain point. And obviously, if it doesn't come in within those guidelines of that certain point, you're going to have to renegotiate the deal. So any questions on that, Chris? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense, especially when you were talking about the trying to get the listing prices closest to the appraisal. Because my opinion on this home is that it is overpriced, and that if the appraisal does come in, the buyer's going to end up having to pay out of pocket for this.
Right. So maybe somebody would come in at asking, or come in $2,000 to $3,000 more, maybe even $5,000 more. That's not unheard of. And maybe they're going to guarantee the appraisal up to $5,000, whatever they've come in over asking, or maybe they can do it up to $10,000. But that's a lot of money out of their pocket, because as we know, if they're doing traditional financing with 20% down and financing 80% of the price, 80% is of what it appraises for, not the contract value. So there's going to be a gap, and hopefully gap coverage was written in there. If it's a maximum of 10 and they've offered 210, then if it's below 200, your language, very important verbiage in that addendum, better say that both parties agree to negotiate. And if you can't come to an agreement on a mutually agreeable price in 24 hours, either party may declare the contract null and void. So this was pretty basic, pretty easy property in a very happening place. Livonia is one of our really hot markets. Amazing what values are at. A 1,200 square foot home for over $240,000, but you know, that's where this market's taken us in these last few years. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. So the report I showed you, which is the CMA one line, that is my seller report. That is what I take with me when I go to a listing appointment. That same report is the review I do after I've shown a house to my buyers and they've expressed interest in it. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be pulling seller's disclosures. Hey, and don't forget, this might be at 9 o'clock at night. If you're competing and there's a deadline that offers have to be in by 7 the next morning, you better be staying up to write it. I don't go into a big 30-page report, although many are available. I know our MLS has a very nice one, but you know, I have found that my clients really don't want to read a lengthy 30-page report with my photo on the cover, followed by pages of information. They don't want to spend the time reading it. The data in this one-line format is very easy to read and understand. You're looking at a one-page snapshot telling you everything you need to know about those properties and values. At times, I do bring my laptop to these pre-listing appointments, and I'll set up a hotspot and I'll go through the comparable listings on my laptop with my sellers, because this is really helpful when I need them to see, for example, that all those neighboring houses that sold at higher prices in the neighborhood, those had new kitchens and baths when maybe their home hasn't been updated for 30 years. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Often they really need to see that. And if you want to use a different report, you can. Just make sure you're actually hand selecting, specifically selecting all the listings that are going in it. Don't just run a report that has an algorithm and just auto-populates a report. That's doing a disservice to your clients. Make sure you can speak to all of the comps that you're presenting and explain why you're using them. Now, you can also incorporate this report into a nice pre-listing presentation. I happen to do my pre-listing presentations on my iPad, But if you need something, you can go to marketing materials in your enterprise account and download the PowerPoint presentation. It's free. You can customize it with your information. You can put your marketing plan in there. That's a good place to put a little information about your background, what you know, what you do, how you work. And then you can add all the data on that comparable, the comparables and the subject property, and you're ready to go. The EXP makes it pretty easy. So some important reminders here. Know the area you're working in. I will say I have a pretty big geographical area that I do work in, but that's because I'm very blessed to have a business that's about 98% referral and past client. It grew that way because clients I've helped referred me to family members, coworkers, their kids, and our geographical sphere and area just kind of grew and grew and grew. It also changed during the recession when that old saying about being a local neighborhood expert, that really went away. What we need to know now is how to get something closed. Number one, how to price, how to determine that it's a fair price, and how to navigate those 6 weeks of the transaction rather, to go from contract to close. You want to use Realist to compare. I think most people across the country have Realist available to them. If you don't, that's okay. We have that located within our MLS. They're very good with having lot dimensions in there, and they typically have, basically their suggested fair market value along with a range. I do this to just see how accurate they are. I don't rely on it. It's not gospel. You need to do this work by hand. But I have found over the last 3-4 years, often they're very, very close. But only do that at the very end to just for your own sake to say, hey, how close did we come? It's kind of like a little betting game. Know when and how to make adjustments. Okay, if you're comping a home and yours doesn't have a garage, but every other house does, you're going to have to know how to make an adjustment. You don't know the price of a garage? Start making some calls. Call builder friends, call handymen, call some contractors. If typical garage in that neighborhood would cost $20,000 to build and add, you might have to make an adjustment on the value of that home. And also, if it doesn't, you better be having a conversation with the building department to make sure they can put a garage there. Okay, so you're always going to do the extra steps and go the extra mile to make sure you know what you're talking about. If there's just no room because of setbacks for a garage, don't try to hide that. People need to know that. Understand this important term, external obsolescence. Okay, appraisers use that. If you have a home backing up to a gas station or located on a very busy road, it's going to get demerits. All right, harder to sell those homes, and their value, their fair market value, reflects that fact. Understand the plus and minus features of the area. You have a lot of parks or you have a lot of commercial property. That's a plus and a minus. And as I mentioned, review your listings with your client on your laptop. I want to add a few things here, and then we'll see if Chris might have some questions, but you may find it necessary to recommend that your client gets an appraisal. Just because there are absolutely no comps, it's impossible to find anything to compare to the subject property. And when that happens, I tell my sellers that if they obtain the appraisal, when they close with me, I'll reimburse them the appraisal fee, right? That's about $500 plus or minus. So if they get the appraisal, we base our list price on that. If we get pushback down the road, we have something certified to share with potential buyers. And if we get to the end and they do close with me at closing time, I'll reimburse them that fee. Also, if you're dealing with an estate, maybe a family selling an estate property, maybe one of the heirs want to purchase the home, they may need a certified value. So I would often recommend an actual appraisal for something like that. Remember, as realtors, we can't charge for a CMA. We're not allowed to. People have offered me money in the past to do that, not knowing we can't charge for that. And, the bottom line here, sellers need a very clear understanding of what constitutes their fair market value. What I said earlier is the sentence I repeat over and over again. What they paid, what they want, and what they need have nothing to do with the fair market value. This is determined by the sale prices of other comparable homes in the area. And also, their taxable value and state equalized value also do not determine fair market value. So there you go. Chris.
Yes. Yes, I do. Thank you for going through that. That was all great information. Just have a couple questions here. When you're talking about doing your CMA and you want to try to get closest to that appraisal as possible as what you think it should be, should you give your client an exact number when you come up with a price, or should you go with a range, and how big should that range be?
Right. So I usually give a range, but it's not too big. And really, this largely depends on what you found with the comps. If you're kind of scattered all over the place, it might be a bigger range. So really, it depends on what you found. So I might typically give a small range followed by a probable selling price. But I go through and I explain all this in detail to them. So for an example, I might say, I recommend to you a list price in the range, or I think a list price in this range would be appropriate. Maybe that's $194,900 to $199,900 with a probable selling price of $195,000. So I do try to zero in on fair market value, what it's going to appraise for. But because things are selling higher right now, really their probable selling price might also have a range. If they've got a really great house with the updates that everybody's looking for, people don't hesitate to go big on their offer.
Thanks, Deb. The other question that I had kind of brings up what we went through yesterday when we were in the neighborhood and talking to the potential clients about their home is, what if there are no comps? Or what if there's only one home in that area that is even close to similar in that neighborhood? What would your next step be?
Right. And maybe we'll do another class to start taking a deeper dive into these different areas and situations that could come up, when we're facing challenges on finding true fair market value. But in rare circumstances, the appraisal might be required, but certainly not for the home we looked at yesterday. What I would do next is expand the area and use a radius measurement. So I kind of showed you that at the top of our search page on our MLS. I would start with a 1/4 mile to the subject property, but keep criteria in there for the school district. Don't let that change. Make that a restriction. If I'm still coming up short, I'll go a 1/2 mile. If I'm still coming up short, I'll go 3/4 of a mile. If I have to, I'll do a 1 mile radius. But now you're really having to be careful to keep it to similar size, definitely similar age, and that whole basement and garage issue, you need those restrictions on there. And I think, I have found in the past when I've opened it up to, even if it's a mile radius, that most people understand that I've really had to kind of stretch and bend the rules a little bit to come up with this. So, but they understand it. If you're showing them that you have done everything possible, and if they did want an appraisal at that point, hey, that's fine. I'll make that offer to them. They can get it now and I'll reimburse them at closing. But in this market, in the seller's market, that usually isn't required. If it were a buyer's market, it may be. And always, when I do these CMAs, I am coming from a very conservative point of view. I usually am determining the value the home is going to appraise for, even though in this market it could sell at a higher price. And I tell people at my pre-listing appointment, I need to sell your home twice, once to the buyer and once to the lender, and that's where the appraisal comes in. So there's no sense in asking a high price, so the listing sits on the market. And in some cases, if we have a shift, you may chase the market down. It also doesn't make sense to go under contract at a high price and then have the deal fall apart when the appraisal comes in lower, because now you've lost valuable marketing time. So right now, selling higher than list is sometimes working if you have that appraisal guarantee, or if it's cash or mostly cash, but always present to your clients coming from that conservative point of view. Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. My last question, I think you already answered it, but I'm going to ask just to see if I'm correct, is, and we kind of dealt with this again and I've dealt with this with previous listings that I've had, is if you have a hard time finding the data on the home that you're trying to do the CMA on, say it's an older home, built in the 20s or 30s, you can't find an old MLS listing. Would that require, or I guess not require, but maybe suggest getting an appraisal at that point as well?
Possibly, but you would, at least from public records and tax records, or BSNA software, which is what the appraisers use, you can certainly come up with a lot size, square footage, the levels, the stories in the home. Usually 3-piece bathrooms are listed, number of bedrooms are listed, and you can certainly do a CMA based on what you know. And then once you get to that pre-listing appointment, you're basically saying, here's what I was able to come up with sight unseen. But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, now that I'm in your home, I'm going to walk through, I'm going to make some notes, and then that's going to allow me to go back, take a deeper dive into finding the most similar and comparable properties. And then at that point, I can come up with a stronger suggested fair market value for you. Because usually this is a two-step process. Unless you've seen that home in person, you really can't come up with that firm number. For me, it's always a two-step process. So in the absence of an old listing, that's okay. Utilize tax records, BSNA software, and a lot of local communities have very good assessing and building department records. You can often find floor plans, you can find elevations, and a lot of detailed information there.
Okay, thanks, Deb. That's great.
Okay. All righty. Well, I think that's it. Unless you have any other questions, Chris?
No, I don't. Thank you. That was all great information. That'll really help with my future CMAs.
Well, great. I really appreciate you being my classroom on this recorded class that we're going to present really for our Journey to Icon group and any agents in our revenue share group. So thank you again, Chris, and I'm wishing you a great day.
Yes, thank you, Deb. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.